Perfect.
All right. So thank you very much, Heather, for talking with us today. I'm very excited about the work that you do. It's something that is near and dear to my own heart, as I am a big celebrator of diversity. And I feel like it's impossible to look at disability without celebrating diversity. So would you like to share a bit about your background with us, just in case
Sure.
you may not be aware?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm Heather. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Handi, and we are on a mission to put pleasure in reach, starting by creating the first range of sex toys for people with disabilities, initially focusing on people who have hand limitations, that prevent them from self-pleasuring and also prevent them from using the toys that are currently on the market.
Amazing, amazing. So coming from that background and really trying to look at ways to develop sexuality for people with disabilities, or however they identify their abilities. In a perfect world, what do you think sexuality looks like?
Oh, I think it's quite fluid and up to the individual, realistically. I don't even know that I could answer that because I feel like I'd be answering that for somebody else on my own behalf. But I think what we've learned in talking to a lot of people is that for the most part, most people are sexual beings and have sexual needs and feelings, regardless of whether they also have a disability, whether that's intellectual, mental, or physical. And I think the more we can recognize everybody's human right to sexual experiences and being in touch sexually with their own sexual selves and sexual identity, and the more inclusive and body positive and just loving of a society we all be. I think we're still a little far away from that, but I think the conversation is definitely moving in the right direction. I think it's great to see more diversity within how beautiful bodies and sexualities are portrayed, and how there's such a much more inclusive ambition, I suppose. I don't think we're there yet, but I think we're definitely, in the last few years, we've taken some massive leaps forward, and it's really lovely to see that.
And that's a great answer. Yes, very much based on human rights and inclusivity and people determining for themselves what their sexuality is and how they want to express it. So
yeah, exactly.
That's amazing. And so so I know that you're busy developing quite a lot of resources for people to use. What do you think are the most inclusive types of toys? Or pleasure devices, as I like to call them.
Yeah, pleasure devices. I think for us, what we found is that many of the toys on the market have been designed for able-bodied people. Many of the toys on the market have, for the companies who are trying to make strides, a lot of the times what you see is toys that have been maybe adapted or added on to. For us, we've tried to take a different pathway and be a design for universal use and universal design and disability-driven design from the beginning, with the theory that disability-driven design and universal design actually benefits everybody, but it's done from the seed of people and working closely with people who are disabled in and around designing for the biggest barriers or limitations to being able to either self-pleasure or directly or use the toys on the market. So I think for us, we've taken a different path forward. It doesn't mean that what other companies aren't doing isn't also attempting to be inclusive, and in some cases may be inclusive. But I think if you're trying to design something that is inclusive, regardless of which part of society you might be leaning into, those who are the most successful are those who are working directly with and alongside the people they're designing for, instead of designing something that they assume is going to work without actually listening to the needs and looking at the needs of the community that they're designing for. And that happens a lot, where it's just kind of like this like paternalistic kind of assumption of we can design for you. It's a bit patronizing as well, and we don't need your input, and here you go, like this. Like we see so many designs, not even just in the sex toy world, but just disability aids, where it's clear that nobody ever consulted a disabled person because half the time they can't get it out of the package, or, you know, it's just like completely not thought through. And I think that happens, unfortunately, more often than not, but I am hoping it's starting to change. And for us, we probably could have had a toy on the market a year and a half ago if we really wanted to. But I think, you know, it wouldn't have actually met the needs of so many people. And what we've done instead is take the longer way around, with the belief that it'll be a more effective end result and a more inclusive end result. And actually I'll be able to sleep because I'll believe that we've actually made something that's going to help people, instead of just taking the sort of the shorter route, but knowing that perhaps we left a lot of cards on the table.
That's great. So you kind of embedded that integrity into there, and getting in really a research-driven process to get everybody's input in there.
Yeah, and it's not the fastest or easiest way to do it.
Yeah.
The opposite of that.
So you're dealing with so much diversity. How do you make a universal product once you have all those bits and pieces coming into play?
Yeah, it's totally impossible. You won't be able to. We knew from the very outset that we would never create one toy and one design that's going to meet everybody. Like, disability is a huge spectrum. Even though our first toy is focusing on hand limitations, that's a huge spectrum. It's everything from reach to dexterity to pain to grip to being able to, perform the same motion fluidly for a long enough time. Like, it's actually so many things going on. And then you layer on top of that sexuality and sexual preferences, again, a massive spectrum. And to think that you might be able to create one product that's going to suit everybody across all gender expressions, all sexual preferences, like all types of disabilities, like it's just not realistic. And so we knew from the beginning, and we worked with really lovely designers who, at the beginning, were like, just don't even think you're going to be able to create one toy. You're going to need a range, and it's going to be a process. But what I do like about the first design that we've landed on, and I might just give you a bit of a show and tell as well, is that we feel it's actually the most. We've chosen this not just because we were directed and guided by the occupational therapist community and also the disabled community every step of the way, but also because it happened to be the design that was the most flexible and versatile, literally and figuratively, in that we felt that this design would actually help, even though it won't be the right thing for everyone, it will help the most amount of people with our first design. And then we can sort of look at, okay, where else might we be able to build or strengthen or release a different toy, et cetera, after this one. But essentially, because of the fact that it's like a big, like a big cuddly device, it allows people to like hug into it, use their different body parts and gross motor skills instead of their fine motor skills. The top is bendable and flexible, so it can go into different like directions and positions for people. So if people have slightly different body shapes or need to position things differently from a disabled point of view, they can do that. It also comes apart in the middle. So again, if you need it in two pieces instead of one, or you need to put it in different shapes, you can do that. Just gives you that extra flexibility to explore different positions and different things that might work for you. And then the middle section is designed to hold our own sleeves and vibrators that we're creating that will be Bluetooth enabled and have big buttons in and around the top that the user can actually place where they need it to. So again, giving people that extra bit of flexibility and versatility that suits them, being able to customize it for what works for them. But it's also being designed to act as a holster for the toys that are already on the market today, and for the toys that are sitting in a lot of people's bedside tables or under the bed that they thought they could use, paid good money for, and then realized for one reason or another that they weren't actually as accessible as they thought that they would be. So for people who can manipulate the buttons, turn them on and off, this actually works as a holster for those toys. And then people can actually breathe new life into the toys they already own and want to try. Or they might say, well, actually, there's a whole bunch of other toys that I want to sort of explore. I didn't think they would be accessible. And now suddenly we've given you a device that increases their accessibility for you. So again, it's just looking at how can we make this one. And also the great thing is that whether you're a penis or vulva owner, this toy can work across all gender expressions as well. So we didn't have to choose penis or vulva owners, one versus the other, and which one to go first. Actually, we found miraculously a design that actually is going to allow us to hit both, hit all gender expressions with one design. And I think at the beginning of this, we didn't think that would be possible. So we're pretty delighted that we've been able to. And this is actually originally was created as a female toy. And when we were testing it with penis owners, every guy we tested it with was like, yeah, but just put a sleeve in there and I can totally use that. And so luckily, because we were always very gender neutral, we tested all the designs with everybody. And yeah, this one was far and away every single penis owner that we talked to was like, yeah, but I could totally use that. And then the amount of creativity people get in terms of how they could use it, I'll let your imagination sort of do the rest, but my mind is blown a number of times. So we know we won't hit everybody with one design. That was never the intent, but we've tried to choose a toy or design that is super versatile, really flexible, and that allows for customization as much as we can, because we know we're dealing with and we're working with people who all have totally different needs and preferences and abilities. Just like everyone does. And so the more versatility you can give people, the more different ways their imagination and creativity can kick in. And they can use it. We've got people who have fed back like using it in partner experiences and partner play, and just really, really loving actually being able to use it, not just with themselves, but actually to enhance their partnered sexual experiences too.
So do you think that the amount of user testing you've done, is that unusual in developing, these pleasure devices or sex toys? I mean, it seems like there's so much research that's gone into these and how much it's been tested. I can't imagine that that's the case always across the toy industry.
Yeah, I think it depends on the company that you're like working with. I think what's been really cool over the last few years is that we've seen quite a few smaller brands start to come up and actually create some really cool innovation in and around the space. But I think predominant, and so I'm sure they do user testing as well. But what I think is how much of that actually gets fed back into the design process, I'm not sure. With us, the reason that we're doing user testing is because we're directly feeding it into the design process. So all of nothing has been fully baked. We've allowed for room to go back in and change the designs and actually strengthen that. And I think a lot of times when companies do testing, like you actually get a toy that is like literally from the factory, and how much room for change and improvement after that is it's just definitely smaller because they're a little bit further down. But I know some of the smaller brands are definitely doing more testing and more of that sort of design thinking. I think the rest of the industry ends up falling into a path of renovation versus innovation. So if you look at a lot of the brands who are coming out now, they've got really interesting branding. They might stand for something specifically, but when you look at their toys, you can see that actually what they've done is they've rewrapped a lot of the designs that are already out there in different colors or in different like brand ethos, and they're sort of saying that they're standing for sexual positivity, but they're the exact same toy designs and as probably everybody else, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. That's just the way that they've chosen to go. For us, because we knew that we wanted to solve a problem that was a design problem, not just a social problem, we knew that we had to be innovative in the way that we actually went and did the design, and that because nobody else had designed for hand limitations, we were going to have to do and we looked before we started this, we didn't want to, we would have loved to lean into research that had already been done, but there just wasn't any. There wasn't even any research on the disability and sex toy experience at all. And so we did our own bespoke research with RMIT as a first off. That led to some initial design concepts. We tested those. That feedback and testing led to a front-running design, which was a different sort of look and feel of the joystick. We then evolved that. We just came out of a round of testing of these, and now we're changing that design. Well, we're evolving it and strengthening it, but it will look very similar to this. And then we're going towards factory. So yeah, lots of research, but I can sleep at night. So
just your whole approach, it's making me wonder, how is anybody else sleeping? Like, because, you know, as you were saying, a lot of times when we design with disability in mind, then it makes it easier for everyone. And to me, this is like a no-brainer that, of course, you know, you should be looking at all different types of bodies and everything when you're developing these toys. So it's really good to see that. I don't know if you would consider that part of your values, or if it's just part of just designing for diversity. But do you feel like that's kind of one of the things that's setting Handi apart from other toy developers?
Yeah, I think we, Andrew, my co-founder and brother, was the one who coined the term disability-driven design. And I think even like, we're very community-led, both with respect to the design of our product, but also everything else that we do. So when we did the book last year, we curated the book, we put it together, but we didn't write it. The disabled community wrote that book. And so we helped to give them a platform, their voices a platform for which to share with the world and to be heard, because I think for a long time they haven't been heard and they haven't had that platform. We didn't give them a voice. They have those voices already, and we didn't write the book. They did. And what we did is we tried to get those stories out there, and we created a platform for them to be heard more strongly. And similarly, any of the other content that we do, any of the other, all of our social feeds, everything that we've done has been actually led by the community, not so much by us. We're kind of the conduit to listen to what the community's needs are, because they haven't really even been asked, let alone listened to, and then to look for ways that we can help and put solutions in place. But again, it's not even putting the solutions in place, it's working with them to find those solutions and helping to get them to a place that's going to help them. So it's very much a community-led company, and that's how by going out, talking to people, having conversations, is how we understand where people need help and where the problems still exist, and then we start to look at how we might be able to solve them. And I think the more conversations you have and the more you dig into this, what we've realized is there are so, like, I wish I had 10 of me, because there's like, you know, there's so many things that we want to be able to do. We just have to not get distracted along the way by all the other ways that we want to help, because there are so many of them. We'll get there, and just keep staying focused on getting the first product to market, and then we can keep looking at how we can keep sort of pushing out. But I think what's been amazing is, you know, our first conversation around this with Andrew and I was, let's design a sex toy. And now when you actually look at the scope of our strategy and what the future looks like, it's product, it's brand, it's education, like it's service. There are so many things and so many areas just within the sexual health and wellness space and disability that really need to be addressed, that are just completely falling by the wayside. That really just need some attention. So I do wish I had 10 of me, but we will get there.
Yes, but I think you know, drawing from the community, that gives you such a strong basis, and giving them an opportunity to have their voices heard. It's amazing. The book, the Handi book of Love, Lust, and Disability, let's say its name, it's absolutely amazing, and the stories in there, it's incredible to hear about people's experiences and the way that it's organized, the good and the bad, and basically all the elements of sexuality. And so you can't help but look at them as whole people. So
exactly.
It's such a stunning book.
Yeah, and if you can get through the first chapter without crying, you're a stronger person than I am. Like, blubbering mess, chapter 1. Yeah, but like, it's a good roller coaster, right? Because there's really like uplifting and funny stories, and then there's stories that are heartbreaking, and so it does really take you on that kind of emotional journey. you're laughing, you're crying, sometimes both at the same time.
Absolutely. And you're relating, I think, which is
Totally
such an important thing, because I know often, you know, as a woman of color, trying to get my experience across, like there's just some things that you're just not going to get. But with disability, there is a much easier entry point to relate to what people are going through. And so, but you just have to know what their experience is beyond what you can see with your eyes.
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes you don't even realize how relatable it is until you're listening or reading, and you're like, it's like, I was surprised at some of them where I was like, wow, like I really feel that as well. I really connected with that. And so there was a lot that was, surprising when I read it from that perspective as well.
Absolutely. I remember there was one that the woman who was struggling to orgasm, and then she talked to one of her friends, and they realized it was because of the medication. And so, and then that's what was hampering that effort. I mean, I'm sure so many people could relate to that, and they would have never thought to check what the medications are, but really that's one of the first things that impacts the ability to orgasm.
Yeah,
so,
totally.
Yeah. That's I know you mentioned your brother a couple of times, and I think it's great. His role as Chief Disability Officer in Handi, I think that's fantastic. And I've noticed that your team is made up of a lot of women. Was that by design, or was that kind of intentional, or was it just how people landed or gravitated towards you?
Yeah, it wasn't intentional. It was just the people who pulled in. So we've got definitely women. Our design team is split though with men and women. We've got people with all sorts of different like sexual preferences and different expressions on the team as well. And it's really just anybody who had a shared passion and wanted to be involved in what we were building, and had a skill set that is going to be helpful and useful to building up the company, or even didn't and just had the passion. A lot of times that's, you know, you can teach a lot of the other stuff. I'm just looking for people who have that shared passion and want to make a difference and contribute to something positive.
Absolutely. That's I think it's great that just what you're doing, it just kind of attracts diversity as well.
Yeah.
So oftentimes when you're developing, as you've shown, when you're developing products that have to do with disability, particularly that are kind of design-led or disability design, but what was the phrase again?
Disability-driven design.
Disability-driven design. Yes. I want to use that all the time now. It means that you have to become an advocate. So if there are people that want to support the work, you know, regardless of their level of ability, how would you recommend them doing it? Just kind of, I'm talking in general around sexuality and disability, just making it, you know, more seen and visible.
So not so much Handi, but just generally.
Yes. I mean, unless you want people to volunteer and help out with Handi.
Yeah, I think just being open to having conversations with people and listening to people when they're expressing their needs and values is important. And I think the more we listen to each other, the more inclusive and empathetic of a society we'll be in. I think, you know, pick up if you can, if you want. Our book is still for sale in both digital and physical versions. I think reading people's real stories and allowing yourself to connect into them in a different way, whether it's our book or any other content that's out there, gives you a different perspective and a different appreciation for the different lived experiences of other people, and also how our lived experiences interrelate, which they definitely do. And yeah, I think just not being afraid to have conversations with people. I think unfortunately we live in this terrible time of cancel culture, and I don't think that's helping. I think that's further polarizing and dividing us. And a lot of times, you know, we get asked questions I think people are scared to ask. But I think having a safe forum and safe space to be able to have those conversations is important, obviously with respect for everybody. But I think if we never talk about things, or we think things are off the table or off limits, is exactly how we wound up in this taboo space in the first place. And so I'd like to see more of those barriers come down, and just a general understanding that for the most part, people are malicious, and most part people want to understand. They don't always come at it in the right way. But it's all of our jobs to help listen and also educate people on what the truth and reality is. And then, yeah, for Handi, any money that comes in from the book is being directly is helping to directly fund the joystick. We actually are looking for people who might want to volunteer a bit of time, particularly like as we continue to march towards launch and market. We'd love to know anybody that might be able to, or willing to join the team from a volunteer capacity. And we've also just opened up a funding round. So from a higher level investment, we are looking for funding at the moment as well. So lots of ways you can support the community just generally, and lots of ways that you can support us if you believe in the mission.
Okay, well, it's a fantastic mission. I think it's great.
Thank you.
So you've you've pretty much answered a lot of my questions and my follow-up questions. But I guess if there was just one thing that you kind of wanted people to take away from this around sexuality and disability, what would it be?
Ooh, that's a tough question. Just one thing. I think what we were saying before, in that every person is more than likely a sexual being, and if we can understand and respect everybody as such, and realize that everybody has different sexual expressions and sexual needs, versus putting people into a predefined box, and really listening to each other, then we live in a much more inclusive and open society. And I guess the other thing is, the more we have those conversations, the more other people are sort of given that light bulb moment, and they can go and look at, maybe they want to design a product or design a solution or a service that might help people. But if we don't talk about it, then people don't even know the problem exists. And so design and services don't come in to help. So yeah, I think the conversation is the biggest part, and we can't do what we're doing without having the conversation. So the more we can talk about things openly and honestly, ask questions, understand each other, where they're coming from, the better.
Brilliant. That's so amazing. Thank you so much, Heather.
That's all right.
Chatting with us today. I'm just going to stop the recording.